Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Marie. Yay, we have technology working. Thank you for saying we're live. Y'all, it has been a very, very funny show behind the scenes here. But I have Amanda Pruden with us. She is my second brain, as I lovingly like to refer to her in my OBM. She runs my business behind the scenes. Amanda's been with me for over a year and has really helped me go from having a business and a team of I think when you came and joined me, I had one VA and you've helped me grow my team. You've helped me get my team well oiled. You've helped me
Yep.
expand my team. And we thought we'd have a conversation with you all today about team efficiency because I think there's so much in the online space about growing your business, building your business, scaling your business. And there's not always a lot of resources or talk about what goes on behind the scene and about team. And I was saying this before we had kind of the tech snafu before. I think even if you've come from corporate and managed people before, managing and leading a team remotely with your own dollars and money can often feel very different than if you've
Yeah.
managed a team in corporate. So let me introduce Amanda first and have Amanda share a little bit about her brilliance because she's been in the corporate world and brings so much genius to the space. So Amanda, hi. I want to tell everyone a little bit about you and your work and then we can chat all the things and I'll try to do technology while you chat.
For sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda Pruden, and I own my own business, which is simply named Amanda Pruden LLC. As Kim mentioned, I came from corporate. I worked in like a massive 59-story, beautiful glass, modern building, and I did all things business operations. I was a data analyst, a process analyst, a systems analyst, project manager, just regular business analyst as well. And so I've translated all of that to the online space. And while a lot of it translates, things are different to what Kim alluded to as well. When you're a small business, things feel much more personal. And so part of what I do is I understand that about my clients and the people I work with is it's not like, oh, it's some budget that gets paid from some place that we don't know of and things are really less personal. So yeah, like I understand that there's that connection to how you want the work done, how you want your team to run, kind of the scary leaps it can be to bring on team and trust them with different aspects and everything. So I now support small businesses and entrepreneurs with all things business operations behind the scenes, from like team efficiency to their processes like content and making sure that it's all a well-oiled machine behind the scenes so that they can really step out and shine. And I know that Kim talks about the brain a lot. And so like, it's that mental load too, right? Like our job is to take a mental load off of Kim. And that's how I view my work with all of my clients as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to say before we dive into the meat and potatoes of our live stream. Amanda's brilliant at what she does, and I call her my second brain lovingly because truly it feels like she's so good at what she does, and you've truly taken the time to get to know my business and to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for anyone who doesn't have an OBM and is maybe thinking about, do I need to hire an OBM? Is that something I want to think about? I think just to describe one of your gifts is I'm not the only person you work with. I know you work with and support
Yeah.
people, and you're so good at, I think, getting in and supporting my team, but also understanding what makes me tick. What do I need? Like
Mm-hmm.
literally becoming my second brain and thinking like me.
Yeah.
So I trust you to go do things on my behalf, knowing you're thinking almost on my behalf. And I think it's such
Yeah.
a gift. And then, like you're saying, it does open up and create that brain space, which for
Mm-hmm.
all of you watching, and this is what we were saying the first time around before we had
Yeah.
our tech stuff. I think whether you are thinking about hiring a team member, don't think you're going to hire a team member for a year, have a team of one or
Mm-hmm.
join your team. I think what we're going to talk about today is so important because it's sort of what's the quote? You're as strong as your weakest link, or I'm butchering. You
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about, Amanda?
Yeah, I do.
I think that's how I think about team. It's sort of like your
Mm-hmm.
team and your ability to scale as a business owner really is so tied into the strength of your team.
The
So why
strength
don't
of
I
the team.
pivot,
Yeah.
since we're starting a little late, why don't I pivot us into what we're going to chat about today, which is
Mm-hmm.
the importance of efficiency with your team and looking at 3 ways to create more of those efficiencies. What we were saying, if anyone happened to catch us the first time around, I was just saying we want to spend a few minutes talking about the importance of efficiency. I think you and I spend a lot of time looking at, I think it was probably one of our first conversations, looking at team
Mm-hmm.
hours and where they're going. And I think so much of
Yeah.
what you do is how do we, the well-oiled phrase, like how do we make things
Mm-hmm.
well-oiled so they're efficient. And I think it's so
Yes.
tied into profitability in business and to the brain
Mhm.
space we talked about. But, and love to hear your opinion on this. I think for everyone listening, what I want to be so mindful of speaking to is we're talking about the importance of efficiency today. Efficiency does
Mhm.
not mean rush, cut corners, do it
No,
cheaply, do it
no.
fast, don't spend hours. It means don't waste time and focus on priorities.
Yes.
So I feel like you probably have a more informed way to speak about that from the team side. I'm curious, Amanda, what are your thoughts on just the importance of efficiency?
Yeah, I think that sometimes well, efficiency is in some ways boiled down to dollars, right? Like if we can do something on less time, then we're saving money. But when you're looking at team and scaling a business, it's not just about paying people less, it's creating more room for you to take on more or to have more freedom or whatever that definition is for you of you scaling and stepping more into the role that you envision for yourself. And so sometimes when the team gets more efficient, it's creating more space within the hours the team already has committed to you to take on more. So it's not like you're like, oh, we got more efficient, I'm now, cutting hours across the team. You've never done that. If anything, you maintain or increase and you say, well, now I can give you more. It's also working smarter. It's leveraging technology and automations and all the things that we can have so that we can be doing the things that need a brain, so that we can be doing the things that need our analytical skills or our human touch or something. And like you say, you delegate, you automate, and you delete. Like
Yes, that is my favorite
it's all of
trifecta.
that.
That's
Yes.
also just side note. That's why I love you because you are my second brain. You like took the phrase out
Yes.
of my head because it's so true. We want to automate,
Mhm.
delegate, and delete. But I think to what you're saying, it's so true. It's not. Of course, we're looking at spend and everyone watching like profit margin. Those are important
Yes.
things. But I will say sometimes doing it I tell my clients this all the time. Cheap does not always save you money. Sometimes
Mhm.
cutting hours actually costs your business more hours or
Yeah.
more time and more profit. And I think to what you are saying, sometimes efficiency for us actually means increasing team hours,
Mhm.
team spend, because we've gotten so efficient, we can do a bigger project or do something that takes
Yes.
time off my plate to increase my capacity for clients or something like that. So I think
Yes.
for everyone listening, that just feels like a very important thing to speak to because I don't want you to get off the live stream and then think
Yeah.
efficiency means rush or cut corners or
Yes. No, never. No, efficiency is always keeping quality top of mind. Like quality is always what you're striving for. You're just wondering how you can get better at something and have something be less dependent on humans. You want to lower the risk potential with something. And yeah, so it's efficiency does not equal like slashing, saving dollars.
but it can increase dollars for everyone
But
listening. I
and
think
it can increase dollars. Yes. Yeah.
it's what you said earlier. I think you said it
Mhm.
perfectly. It's working smarter, not harder. I think is such
Yeah.
a great way to say it. And I think just and then we'll pivot because I know we have 3 points we want to get to, and
Mhm.
I think you have so much to say there. But just for everyone listening to, I think it's just such a helpful thing because I'm talking about this with clients all the time when I'm supporting them with bringing on team. I find so often as I increase team spend, the business is
Mhm.
also able to grow and scale. And I find
Yes.
often I have to do that first to open up
Mhm.
the space we're talking about and to open
Yes.
up space for clients to come in and to even allow for like sometimes the way to efficiency is being a little messy on the way there and having someone brilliant like you help me clean up the mess.
Yeah.
But let's pivot a little bit and talk about our 3 tips. I'm just pulling up our notes because I want to make sure I hit on the good stuff. I know we had, I mean, there's so many ways you can build inefficiencies for team, but I wanted to speak to 3 and Amanda helped me brainstorm these
Mhm.
things we're actually doing actively in my business because I think it's just helpful for all of you. Just you can have a kind of a case study behind the scenes. So the first one we were chatting about, and I think that we've done, and this is such a simple, practical, tactical tip that anyone can can do. You don't have to have a team of 45, but it's having a communication or work management tool, and then also really being clear on how you're using that to increase efficiencies. So I can definitely speak to, how that supports me. We use Basecamp in the business, but I think throwing it over to you, Amanda, first, because I think this is almost like your zone more to speak to why
Mhm.
that's so important and how that helps the team.
Yeah, so with communication, as Kim said, and if you're a client of hers, you know that she uses Basecamp, that's her hub, and that's what we use as well. And communication is beyond the actual words you're saying. Communication can be ease of doing things. So like what we do with team communication a lot is we share links and we put links in as many places as possible. Because one way to help communicate is be like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Don't go spend, like we all know that we can find most of the time what folders something are in or where in Basecamp it is. But if we can just make it easy to direct somebody to exactly what we're talking about. And then to Kim's point too, like sometimes what's scary for people, especially if you have a corporate background or any sort of like typical job that was an in-person thing, is that when you are virtual, you're like, you're not seeing if somebody's in their office or not, or you're not like bumping into somebody in the kitchen. Like you miss out on all these opportunities that you have in an in-person setting to collaborate or to talk. So we just need a place where we can drop messages all the time. And sometimes it's just like, hey, how was your weekend? Or, hey, I noticed this about you. And then essential communication also, because we're online and this is a flexible work environment, like we all have, you know, a commitment to how often we check in and we have, you know, our due dates for our work, is that people are sometimes on later, some people are on earlier. And so just having one place that we know that we can always go, like, we're not like, okay, well, should I be checking my email and should I be checking Basecamp? And then is there this other place? One stop shop. We know that this is where we're going to communicate and where we can stay in touch. And likewise, if somebody needs me, I know that I go to one spot and I can check in and see where people are at.
There's a couple things you spoke to that I want to touch on. I think just for everyone listening to, I think this is something we talk a lot about with our clients, having a container for clients in between sessions,
Yes.
your coach or a designer, but we sometimes don't think about it with team. And it's really creating that same space. And I think it can feel a little bit just in terms of the efficiency piece. I think sometimes we can forget how that really, to what you said, streamlines time on both sides, because if you don't know where to communicate with someone and you're checking your email, but someone else is texting you, that's lost communication, lost information.
Yeah.
The two other points that you said that I think are just helpful for everyone to hear, just to reiterate and to speak to on my side a little bit, it definitely helps me as well. And I think something we do really well with the team is communicating. This is where we share things, but these are our boundaries around it. I happen to message late at night and don't expect anyone to message late at night. And I think that keeps people checking in every hour of the day, which is the opposite of efficient if you're doing work. But this is an interesting piece with the efficiency point. I'd be interested to hear your thought. And then I do want to talk about, come back to the links, but you mentioned how we'll check in with each other and we'll say hi and we'll have some niceties. And I think for everyone listening, you'll have to comment in the comments, y'all. Does that sound counterintuitive to efficiency? Because I think it can seem like, well, if you're talking about efficiency, y'all should just get right to work. And
yes, true.
I know on my side, having a moment of humanity and feeling like we know each other, we care about each other, we're invested in our relationship. I feel that way with our team. I actually think that lends itself to the overall business efficiency, but I'm curious what you think about that, because I think that's like an interesting nuance on our topic.
Yeah, I think it is. I think in the online space, we talk so much about trust between client and the person like selling the service provider or the course creator or whatever. And we forget that trust is essential in a team. And so to know that people have our back or to know that people understand things, it makes it a place that you want to show up. Like, do you want somebody to dread going into Basecamp? Do you want somebody to dread going into Slack or email, like wherever you're doing your communication? No, you want people to be happy to show up to their virtual workspace. And then sometimes, because what happens also on a virtual team with communication is tone is lost. And so like we've never had anything where somebody's like, whoa, but sometimes when we're quickly in a rush and we're typing things, not everything comes out in that like, oh, thank you so much. And I hope you have we always have that stuff in, but then when somebody is being more quick because they're in a rush or something, then you're not like, oh, I must have done something wrong. Because you're like, no, we have a really good relationship. This is just them being rushed. And so you have to keep that human piece, especially in a virtual, because like I said, you're not seeing somebody in the hallway and smiling, right?
Like water cooler and grabbing
Talk, yeah.
I don't even know if water coolers really exist post-COVID, or if they ever exist.
Yeah,
Don't have that like human interaction.
Yes.
This is like me geeking out a little bit, but I know they've done studies that sometimes that like non-productive work time can be the most productive work time, and
Yes,
really like lend itself to that. So I think there's an element like when we have our team meetings, when you and I have our meetings, we spend a few minutes chatting at the start, but I think that's equally as valuable and as fit
for
as
sure.
we get to business. So I think just for everyone listening, I think because I know everyone on my audience is very heart centered. I think that's just nice that you don't have to lose that piece. And
no, you don't.
you can speak to this, Amanda. I know when I'm like in calls, because I always check team comments first in Basecamp. If I'm like, I've got just a few minutes, I can be very quick and very to the point. But I think to what you're speaking to, because we've built a relationship, and I think I've probably said in different ways before, if I'm doing that, it's just because I'm in between things. It doesn't have anyone spin out, which is kind of the opposite of productivity.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, who's on the other side and you know what their true intention is, even if you're like, oh, that was really to the point, but it's not to the point in a negative way. And I think that sometimes when you have those casual conversations, it allows people to feel, and this is another thing about efficiency, because you want to, which is kind of going on a slight tangent here, you want people to feel like they can help you become more efficient. You want people to feel that they have ownership to do that. And so when you create an environment where it's like, I don't just dictate what I need you to do, I don't just dictate my standards, this is like, we communicate, we have back and forth conversation, and somebody's more likely to be like, oh, hey, and I thought of this thing, or I noticed this thing, and I think there's an opportunity for us here. Or sometimes in these conversations, we find out that somebody on the team does something else for another client or has a passion. And we're like, hey, we don't have to necessarily add another team member. We've already onboarded somebody who has our culture. We can just add to their responsibilities. And so these are the things that all come out of at some point from just having a relationship with your team.
Which I think is really interesting, probably for people listening, because I think sometimes we hear things like team and it sounds like if I don't have an MBA, I won't know how to have a team, especially remotely. And I think it's nice to see some of these are being human and being interested. I mean, this part here that you're talking, we've experienced that with transition in our team. We just had someone go on maternity leave unexpectedly. We've had some transition and stuff. And I think because of conversations, it was a lot easier to kind of, some of the other things we'll talk about too, but like be able to navigate because we were more clear on where we could shift and move people around, and we're more, I think, receptive to some of that than we might have been if that weren't our culture kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah. And sorry, quickly on the MBA thing too, because yes, that's like the outward corporate sign of success and going up a ladder and stuff like that. To that point though, what they don't teach you in school is EQ, which is emotional intelligence, which your heart-centered people have, right? And so that's a lot of it. And sometimes too, like you get to notice someone's writing style, and then sometimes you're like, oh, is something okay? I'm noticing. And then they might be like, oh, I'm busy. Or they might be like, actually, no, this thing's going on in my life. And then you're able to better support your team, which then again, in unintentional ways leads to efficiencies and everything. Like it's beautiful how it just kind of spirals out when you take care of your people.
I love that, because that's the like whole service part of me. Like, take care of your people, serve your people well, and it works out. But there's thank you for sharing that, because I do think, I mean, I know that when I started my business, that was I think even when we started working together and we had our first routine meeting, I was like, oh, how do I do this? So I think it's just like for everyone listening, super, super normal, but Amanda has been on both sides of it and is in multiple businesses. So I think it's nice for you to hear words from that as well on the team side of things. Before, because I want to be mindful of your time because I got you started late on this. Before we dive into other 2 points, you said one other thing around
Mhm.
efficiencies that's really on the practical, tactical side. I think it's just so
Yeah.
helpful for everyone to hear. This is something I think for me, this is one of your like probably like this is just super obvious, like my genius. And it was like this makes everything so much easier. But and I want to reiterate for everyone in case it sort of like went in through one ear and out the other.
Mhm.
One of the things in terms of having everything in one place and having some of those efficiencies, and so team isn't spinning all over the place and we're able to
Mhm.
communicate really easily. Something Amanda has really implemented in our business is really using links. And what we mean by that is everywhere. There's, let's say Amanda assigns me a task. I'm
Mhm.
edit our blog that's going out. She doesn't just assign me a task, she links the Google document that I need to go
Mhm.
go into that task. Now, if I'm in the Google document, let's say I needed to approve a graphic. I wouldn't for a blog
Yeah.
post. So we're going to make that up here. Amanda would link to the folder with that image. Now, all of those
Mhm.
things, I know where they are. They're my documents. And for me
Yeah.
to go into Google Drive and figure out which folder it's
Mhm.
in, and then figure out where the connecting folder for the graph, that's inefficient. I would lose.
Mhm.
It's also like a sidetrack. Like I would be distracted over here, and so I'm not in my like what I'm doing and focus. But all of
Mhm.
those little things like that create such efficiency. So it's not just having Basecamp or Asana or ClickUp. It's really
Mhm.
looking at, and I think that's what you do, I think with clients, but also in some of your
Yeah.
intensives, like looking at how can you use that strategically to build efficiencies within the communication. So like, yes, the
Yes.
EQ part, um, I like that part, but I think
Yeah.
just like the strategic part of that, there's so many things you've brought into our business that just, you're shaving off 15 minutes everywhere on lost
Mhm.
documents. That's hours a week that
Yes.
myself, but also team is getting back.
Mhm.
So I don't
Yeah.
know if there's anything you want. I mean, you don't have to add anything to that, but I just want everyone to hear because it's such a great hack. But I know there's so many things you help people with that aren't just that one
One
example.
thing. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the beauty sometimes of business operations is, first of all, it's something that a lot of people don't want to do in their business. They want, they want to market, they want to bring in clients, serve clients, and then they want to outsource their operations to somebody. But operations don't have to be that intimidating. And sometimes tightening up your business operations and creating efficiencies is as simple as just like being link happy and just hyperlinking as many things as you can, dropping links in where you can. And yeah, like it's not always complicated or expensive systems and integrations and that kind of stuff that can seem intimidating. It can be as simple as links.
Well, I think it's just nice for everyone to know. It's not some complicated. You don't need to go buy
Yeah.
some new software to do this.
Mhm.
And yet we're probably saving, I don't know, but a lot of, I mean, I'm sure it's easily hours between all of us per week.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
This
for
way,
sure. Yeah.
and then brain space as well in terms of being frustrated when you can't find something, which is big. And
Mhm.
that is why we hire people like you, because I will say it is simple, but I don't think
Mhm.
the way my mind works, I don't think I was even in the headspace of that is something I could think. Like
Yeah.
I'm smart in a lot of ways, it's just not how my thought process works. So I think
Mhm.
it's also having that person like you where it's like this is your genius, and so you're just able to spot those places to increase efficiency.
Yes, I'm the nerd that gets really excited with that kind of stuff. And one last thing, I know that we're trying to transition to our other 2 points on the communication thing, because Kim chose a great system like Basecamp, we can literally communicate in there, but like she just touched on, we assign action items and to-dos within that. And so we can put our due dates and we can add links and we can even say, when this is completed, notify so-and-so. So it just makes communication so much easier, because how often are we like, oh shoot, I forgot to tell somebody something. We don't have to, like, investing in something like Basecamp is, and then where we can talk and also have our work. That is great.
I always joke that I should be an affiliate for Basecamp because I'm always like team Basecamp, but to what you're
Basecamp, yeah.
saying, and then I really will transition us. We could just have talked about this communication
About this one thing,
for
about
3 hours.
but we
So
will move on. Yes.
I do want to give people the other two, but I think just to what you're
Yes.
saying, it's just so helpful. It's like that is just having a second brain in your business, having an OBM, having a team, having someone who's focused on efficiencies also means for me, and it's for anyone who's in that place, you're like, oh, is it time for me to bring that person onto my team? Part of how you are my second brain is you're also taking that worry of, do I need to remember to do this? Do I need to think about doing this? We're using something like Basecamp to track that, but it's almost like you're taking that tab and closing it for me, which helps me be more efficient, not even with team, but it helps me serve clients at a deeper level or create content at a deeper level. And that's just kind of another nuance of efficiency. It's not always just in the task we're doing, but how it trickles out to other parts. All right, I'm going to make us move to the next one because otherwise I will keep you for 4.
I support that.
And I'll just check and see. I don't think we have any comments, but y'all, oh, Marie, don't worry about that comment. You said that comment's not for you, Kim. I did see something in there, but didn't have a chance to read it. If y'all have questions for us or comments, I know we're not in the group, so some of these I will see later, but I do see a few of you there. Feel free to throw them at me or at Amanda. Okay, so the next thing here that we do on the back end of my business that Amanda's been really huge help for is we create processes and resources for team. We also really look at repeat tasks that we do, and I think something we've been really mindful of, and I checked in with Amanda to confirm this is true, but really making sure we're also not delegating things. I'm not delegating something to Amanda or to someone else unless it's a repeat task, there can be a process put around. And then for almost everything, Amanda does it first, even if we're planning on handing it off to someone else in the team. And I'll have her speak to why that's efficient. I think for some people that doesn't seem efficient because it's almost like a protracted timeline. If you're going to have OBM or someone learn something only to pass it off to someone else. But I have found this to be, especially recently with some of the transition we've had behind the scenes, really, really valuable. So I don't know, I know that's one of those also topics, Amanda, where it's like there's 8,000 things you could probably say to it, but I don't know, touch on that just in terms of what you've seen behind the scenes in my business of that.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of finance term that's like, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And it's the same sort of thing with how you've approached work. There's the person who ultimately is executing on those tasks, on that work. And then you have me, and then you have yourself that understands this. So then life happens with team, right? So then you always know that there's somebody there that can do things, and you're never in that position where you're like, oh, my knowledge left and I don't know how to now run a portion of my business. So I think that's a big piece of it. And I say that it's layering it on, like we layer on the training. And part of it is if people are in a state of overwhelm, they're not going to be efficient. And so when somebody comes in and they're learning new personalities and they're learning a new culture, and they might be learning new systems and a new brand, like all of these things, you want to give them the opportunity to get really comfortable and to parallel it to how you run your business. And you talk about this a lot in your content and in your lives and everything. Learn to do one thing really well. It's like, learn to do your one offer really well, learn to do your one task really well, get comfortable and efficient in it. And then when you do add the next thing on, you're already doing something really well. You've made some process improvements, you're comfortable, and then you can take on something else. And then you have that capacity for that. And then you get really well at that. And then we can add on. And it's that thing where kind of going back to what we said earlier, efficiency doesn't just mean cutting dollars. Efficiency might be creating space for more. And so it can also be making sure it's the right fit, right? Like somebody might put their hand up and say, yeah, I've never done that, I'm willing to try that. And then it's like, oh, that's not a right fit because maybe the hours of the day that we need that task completed doesn't align with their schedule, or maybe they realized it wasn't a good fit, but there's still other things they can do. You're giving people the opportunity to feel into it because you want it to be a good fit on both sides, because it will be obvious if it's not an aligned task for a person, if it's not an aligned role for a person.
I think a couple of things you said, I mean, everything you said is cool, but just to highlight for everyone, well, you're a genius.
You're so nice.
It's just the truth. I have the best team. I was messaging you in Basecamp before our call. I'm like, I love my team. Y'all are the best. You're better at me than my job for those things.
You do have the best team. You pick really good people.
Well, thank you. You're good at that. Love best. But I think what you said there is it's sort of like when we're looking at having you do something first and learning something and really handing something off to the rest of the team and having someone learn something, kind of that like layering what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I really think where it's like, you're just not handcuffed in that way. So if someone's sick, or if someone goes on vacation, or if
Yeah.
someone, has to unexpectedly leave because something's happening with their family or whatever that might be. And if you're working
Yeah.
with a team long term, which hopefully you are, I think part of efficiency is also ideally growing a team that, I mean, people grow and evolve, but like is with you for more than a hot second. Those things happen. I think part of what we built in there, it's almost like playing the long game and having you learn some things first, and then having more than one person, like you said, understand the process and be able to hand that off, and learning one at a time. It really doesn't make you feel handcuffed in your business. But I think it also, what we're speaking about, I think it's like getting it's Jim Collins from Good to Great, where he talks about businesses that have like exponentially grown and outpace other businesses like tenfold.
Okay.
He talks a lot about it's getting the right people, but it's not just about getting the right people, having the right people in the right seat on the bus. That is really the difference between a good and great company. And so I think a little bit of what you're saying here too, when you're layering on training with a team member, you're able to make sure you're putting them in the right seat on the bus.
Yes.
And that is everything, because you can have a brilliant person in the wrong seat on the bus. And I mean, you can have the most genius person ever. If they don't have a driver's license and they don't know how to drive and they're driving the bus,
100%.
I think that's just to everyone listening. Like, these are just little things you can think about that I think make an exponential difference, and they kind of compound over time.
Yeah.
But I share from my side, it doesn't always feel like it. I think it's because I hear it from clients all the time, can almost feel like, but this takes so long. Why would I spend the time doing it this way? And I think it's helpful to hear like it really does pay off. Does that feel true on your side? Because I know on my side it feels like that, but I wonder on your side, so much of your role now is also speaking with team, helping like when they're transitioning into new roles. I'm curious, does it feel that way for you?
It does. Like, I feel that it's supporting people in a good way, because sometimes people, like, we're natural people pleasers usually, and we're like, okay, yeah, I can take it all on. But if you give people the opportunity to say like, yes, this pace feels good. And then what we tend to find too is people say like, okay, now I'm ready for more, because they feel that confidence within themselves and they know that they're the right person in that seat for all of that. And I also think that with the piece on me doing most of the tasks first, and before we transition to the team, it provides more space for you. So like the team can come to me with more things and I'm able to answer more questions. I'm able to support them more, troubleshoot, so that we have to go to you less, which creates more space. So I've been able to accrue a lot of knowledge about you and the brand and how we like things done, down to just like simply a process. Like, this is how we, technically do step 1 and then step 2. So that you don't have to be as involved. If you were the only person who knew all of this, it's like when you look at an org chart, you can't have everybody funneling up to Kim. You can't have everybody funneling up to the CEO.
It makes all the difference in the world. And I think that's such a great way to phrase it for everyone. If you're thinking about that outside of our smaller businesses, you can't have everyone funneling up to one person. I'll say on my side, it's such a massive, it's closing the tab. It's creating that break space. And I think this is where efficiency takes on more than one meaning. When I think about my efficiency, it's not efficient for me to retell and to speak to everyone on the team every day. Like, that actually makes me very inefficient with what my job is in the business, but also it has me interrupting, like I'm not focused. And so the temporary lowers your IQ. Like, it's very fractured thinking. So I think it's just interesting where it's like that creates a different efficiency as well. I was going to ask you something and it just jumped out of my brain, but because I feel like we just kind of blended two things here together.
Yes.
I'm curious, and for everyone listening, really talking about the importance of systems and processes, but also really like the way we and our team, like train, which is
Mhm.
one thing at a time and kind of going through you. Oh, this is what I was going to say for everyone. This is the
Okay.
thought. We'll talk processes and systems a bit. For everyone listening, I think this is helpful to hear. You've been with me for a little over a year now. And I think
Yes.
like, at least on my end, and I think you've been very intentional, like, you know, my business, as you're saying, you know, my brand, you know, my likes and
Mhm.
dislikes. You've really taken the time to
Yeah.
listen, like pretty much everything that happens in my business that I'm not needing to do, but that didn't
Mhm.
happen on month one. I feel like it's like a
No, that
meta of
didn't.
what we're talking about in terms of like the layering part. So I say that for
Mhm.
everyone listening, is I remember I very much wanted this in my business, but we had to build that
Yeah.
together.
Mhm.
And I think just to everyone listening, like that's an important thing too to think about with efficiency. I think sometimes we think it's just like, and
Mhm.
on day one, someone knows my whole
Yes.
business and brand. I mean, you're pretty good. Like you, I feel like day one knew more than most people would, but it still took time, I think, for
For
like
sure.
all of this to be layered on.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it also, like, when I kind of talk about like you don't want anybody overwhelmed, it wasn't overwhelming for me too, because you were even upfront and intentional. Like, let's start here. I have a vision for where I see you and where I see this role, but let's start in these places. And it really was getting to understand your brand and your brand voice, as well as how to execute some things. And it's also personalities and work styles as well, right? Like, how do I best support you? Like, what is the best way for me to assign tasks in Basecamp? What is the best way for me to tell you something, to ask you something, all of those things, and to understand like what your schedule typically looks like. So layering that on all helped me feel very comfortable at each stage with what I was taking on, because I was like, oh, and then it's a faster learning curve when you already have a foundation, right? Like it's about building that foundation, but you're right. It's so easy to get excited and be like, I've made my first hire, or I've made my first hire in a certain role, and be like, here. But it's being intentional about that.
Well, and I think
Setting
just
everybody up for success as well, right?
totally. Well, and if and the reason I think it's important to speak to, because I think in our online space there is a little bit of like, I will hire an OBM and they'll save me, or I'll hire a virtual assistant and they'll save me. And either they'll
Yeah.
see my strategy, or I can say here,
Mhm.
and they'll figure
Yeah.
everything out. And I think just seeing that's true. And it's also,
Mhm.
I think, having an intentionality and building that together. And just a
Yeah.
side note for everyone listening, if you are hiring someone, listen to what Amanda just said here, how thoughtful she is about like noticing my work patterns, noticing my style,
Mhm.
noticing like that's why she's so great at what she does and why she's so supportive. So if you're bringing
Mhm.
someone on, like think about those things if you're hiring, whether it's a virtual assistant or an OBM, because that's part of
Mhm.
like it feels so supportive on my side. I'm sure another client of yours probably has a completely different communication style and what they
Yeah.
need. But that also means be mindful if you're bringing people on, because they're dealing with so many
Yeah.
personality types. It probably
Mhm.
takes a second. Let's see what
Yeah.
we have. Marie says, love the idea of high quality. This was when we were
Mm.
speaking earlier about high quality. Amanda,
Yeah.
I want to be really mindful of your time. Do you have 10
I'm
minutes?
good. I'm
Okay,
good. Yeah, we're good.
because we started, for everyone watching now on the replay,
Yes.
I have to check, we started just a little late. I think systems and processes are one of those buckets where it's just like, especially for you, because I think your brain's
Mhm.
set on it. So maybe
Yes.
we could just touch like one thought in terms of like for people thinking about systems and
Mhm.
processes, what to be mindful of in terms of why they would use
Mhm.
that for efficiencies. Because I think sometimes it almost seems like, yay, I've heard about that thing, or do I really need that, or even where
Yeah.
to start?
So I don't think that you can really successfully bring on a team or scale your business without processes, because you need something that people can rely on that aren't you. And you need something that people can look back on that's not sending you a message and saying, oh, right, what do I do at this stage? And like we said, you've set up your business that the things that we do are rinse and repeat. So we've been able to create this structure. So I would say that you have to do it if you want to successfully grow, if you want to successfully delegate, if you want to successfully take vacation or do whatever your definition, or take on more clients, start a new product or service in your business, whatever, you need a process. I'm going to throw in a second thing. Just start somewhere. It's literally, it can start as simple as a brain dump. It can start as simple as creating a loom and just walking somebody through something and talking while you're doing it. It's just starting somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be this like beautiful, robust thing. Just have a place that people can rely on. I think that that's what you've done really well. You've always been big on Looms, and we've got our process documents that are like Google Docs linked within Basecamp so that we can find them. But you need them. You absolutely need them to scale. And it's easier to start now than in the future.
So many thoughts on this, but first, thank you for saying that, because I think just the term processes and systems, if you're not a systems process person, I think just makes people think, I can't do this. How do I do this? I can't do this. And I think it's just helpful for everyone to hear from you to start somewhere. And full transparency for all of y'all listening. Like, we've been working together for over a year. I had started to build a team before that. I had some systems and processes in place. I had some that were more refined than others. We're still carving out hours to more like to refine some of those systems and processes more, because the business continues to move and we continue to have stuff going on. But we at least started somewhere, so we have phones, and then we add to that. And then we maybe take that Loom I recorded that you then turn into a Google Doc later. But it's kind of an ongoing process, but that at least gives us start, I think, to start. So I say that just so you can see, like, it's sort of an ever going, I think, ongoing going process. And something I recommend to clients is, which I think is really similar to what you're saying, and it's just record yourself on a Loom walking through something. It's at least a place to start. It's, I think, when you take my Looms and you map it out in a way where I'm like, oh, that's much more helpful. I do think that's really helpful for people to see, but then you're at least making a start for your team.
Yeah. And I think that you always, like, we need those visuals, especially when we're remote teams, right? Like, we can't walk into someone's office and point and be like, well, click here and do all these things. So you kind of need like that. Here's the quick bullet points on it. And then here's the video. And then what I think naturally happens when you record a video too, that I know happens when you do it, is you're just like, and do this thing. And this is why I like it this way. So then you start to get people's preferences in the process. And then when people understand why they're doing something, then it's more likely to stick. They're more likely to adopt, and then they know how to take that and then filter that into other areas of the business.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's a really helpful, that's something I learned from my coach. And I think it's almost like I forget that I do that now, but it's sort of whether I'm recording a Loom or whether I'm leaving a comment on, you know, I'm a control freak. I'm like a recovering control freak. So whether I'm like, we call it detail oriented over.
Yes, you're detail oriented.
Everyone on my team knows I'm a control freak. Whether I'm leaving feedback, I always try to be mindful of, and this is my thought process behind it, or this is why we're doing it this way. To what Amanda's saying, I think on the communication side too, it can help people see it's not just being a control freak. Like, there's, even if it's doesn't make sense to them, like they have that context. But I think it also helps you can speak to this on your side, but the thought process behind that for me is that then when I share that with you, you can also become my second brain and kind of understand situations that we haven't talked about. Oh, Kim would probably think this or do this or want this.
Yeah, it helps create more of a lens of what it looks like to be in Kim's business. And then when you start looking at other things, and just to loop back on the one point that you made, that just start somewhere and it can evolve. They always evolve. Like, I call processes living things, a living document, whatever. It will evolve because your business changes, you implement a new tool, somebody takes it on and they have a new question or a new idea that improves something or provides more context. So they will always evolve, and that's not a bad thing. You want to be making tweaks. If you have not touched a process in like over a year, then you might be like,
We just had someone move into a role for one of our lovely VAs who's taking maternity leave, and I actually revisited I hadn't revisited our processes around that a second. And I think I actually paused everyone. I was like, I need to re-record some Looms and like look at this, because even though it's the same thing we've been doing, things have shifted and evolved, even within the same exact step that we were taking. So I think that's just such an example. We literally just experienced that. So I think it's nice to normalize that. One last question on this for you, for everyone listening. Okay, I'm gonna set up my first like baby step on this so that I can bring on my first team member. I'm just going to start. Do you have any suggestion or thoughts on kind of where to start? Because I think it's almost like there's so many,
Mm,
where's a good first process or system? Like where would you say like maybe start here or don't start here?
mm. So it's all about creating that foundation. So start with a process that's repeatable, or start with something that really helps them get a peak. I'm not saying like confidential, but you want to explain the why for people. People need to know why they're doing something. People need to, it has to do with that whole shifting your brain into a new business. So I would say just be clear on giving them that little bit of a peek, letting them understand why you do things the way you do, why they're important to your brand, and kind of what we talked about already with that layering. Just start somewhere, because both people have to establish trust and kind of figure out how that, like, what are our rhythms, what are our personalities, styles, all of that. And then that will help you navigate that so much more, I think.
The the thing that jumped out for me and what's always been my thought process behind that,
Mhm.
and I cannot say that phrase, but I think it's the repeatable piece. It's looking at like
Mhm.
what is something that I'm repeating over and over again because it's just going to be easier. You kind of
Yeah.
have to know your processes first to create a process around it and share it with someone
Mhm.
else. And then I love what you said just in terms of giving someone that peak and using that as even a
Mhm.
way to like give them a lens into the business and build some of that trust.
Yes.
Because that is so much when it comes back to efficiency. I think everything we're talking about, it's seeing like it really is a little bit of the like practical, tactical, but also
Mhm.
the emotional element that allows for that
Yeah.
well machine.
Yeah, because I find that sometimes people, they have resistance coming up, and it's like, but have you boiled it down to the basics? Like if you're asking someone to jump around into a lot of little things without understanding that baseline, and that whole layering thing too, and I know that I bring this up a lot because I've been in corporate, but we all know what it was like to step into an in-person job where they throw you in the fire and you're kind of like, what? Versus the job where you step in and they're like, this is how you turn on your computer. This is the system we use for this. This is how you're going to do this. And then the difference in how you feel. And so kind of think about it from that perspective too. You're eager, you're making your first hire or your first investment into a certain position, but be like, oh, right, how does it feel on the receiving end? And how am I most likely to have success with that?
And they've never been in your business before, and they're working in
Mm.
who knows how many other businesses that might be
Yeah.
doing the same thing on the outside, but the process behind the scenes and the why and the reason they do things might be
Mm-hmm.
completely different. And so I'm
Yes.
always thinking, almost explain this like it's something seems so obvious to you. I was
Mm-hmm.
recording something for you this week. I said, oh, I need to
Yeah.
spend a little more time with this because you realize you do something automatically on your side and you forget there's so
Mm-hmm.
micro steps to
Yeah.
something that you're doing. And you have to imagine that the person you're speaking to, that someone else is having them doing it completely different.
Mm-hmm.
It has a completely different process. And this is the last, I swear we're gonna wrap this up. The last thought I will say on my side, this is the way I think about it. I think there are certain things for a system and a process, like a process that's really important to follow. But then I also personally, for me, the outcome is the most important
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yes.
And so I think there's a lot of things too where I don't really care how it gets. Like, I think you've
Mm-hmm.
created some processes, other people on the team have created processes. I'm like, that's fine. That's not how I would have done it, but the
Yeah.
outcome is being met. And so I think there's knowing when you need to walk someone through. These are all the different things. Let me give you every micro detail and when like give someone the autonomy to work their
Yeah.
magic. Because a lot of times your team will do it better than you.
Yes, but that's something that you have to understand when you're working with entrepreneurs, and that it's good to recognize in yourself if you're the person making the hires, is that your business is you, right? Like your revenue is tied to what you pay yourself, what your expenses are, is like, it's all so personal. And so if you can kind of be a little bit objective like that, it really helps you out.
And it helps the business out, I think,
Yeah.
massively. I could geek out with you, and I might if I can figure out the technology, see if you'd like to join me again for one of these. We can actually do it in my group. But I know everyone
Yes.
watching now, and everyone's going to watch on the replay, and they're going to want to know how to connect with you. They're also going to want to know how they can get support from you, because this is what you're so great at. And I will just to give you a like live testimonial, it has made such a difference in my business having your support. Like, we've scaled together. Like, it's just on an efficiency side, on a brain space side, on a like, I feel grounded and at peace in my business side, but just on a financial profit side as well. So tell everyone where they can find you. I don't know what opportunities they have to connect with you and work with you, but if you want to share everyone like all the things about
all the things,
all the things.
So my favorite, yes, all the things. My favorite corner to hang out on the internet is Instagram, and you can find me at Amanda Pruden Co. So Amanda, PRUDENCO. And then my website is AP, as in Amanda Pruden, virtualsolutions.com. But through Instagram as well, you can find the link to book a call with me. I think that's the best way to start, because kind of as we've been talking about here, like it's all very, the work I do is custom. Like I'm not set, like I don't do any work that's just copy and paste or anything like that. So I really want to talk with people and be like, where are you at? What do you need? Right now, what I'm loving to do is help people in more of like an intensive session. So like a 1 week intensive or a 1 month, or even like the done in the day things that are really popular, and be like, how do we get you streamlined? Whether you're still a solopreneur or whether you have a team, sometimes having that outside perspective, even if you have a team, is great because we're seeing things differently with a fresh perspective. And so I love those little projects, like I said, solopreneurs or with teams, because everybody should have access, whether it's one piece in your business that we're working on or a lot. And one of the things I'm really loving right now is if you're like Asana or ClickUp or even Basecamp, like let's make your business, let's make that location, that tool, your central business hub so that you're more efficient. Let's figure out how to maximize that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And I know if there's someone listening who's heart-centered, I know it can almost seem like, I really, like, is that really that important? Like, it's that important. It makes all the difference in the world when your hub is centralized and when it's efficient and when you have extra set of eyes so you can focus on what your magic is and what your work is. So I highly recommend take Amanda up on that. I'll make sure, I think we'll be able to share this in my group so we can drop in the comments some of those links, and then we'll links back out to the email list. If you're on my email list, you'll get, we'll make sure we put Amanda's links in there as well. I highly, highly, highly recommend you take her up on that and her support. I cannot like sing enough praises. And to you and just to what that does efficiency wise and profit wise in the business. So
well, thank you. Well, you've also done a great job of building your team and learning with your team and nurturing your team and being focused on the outcome, but also the people, because that makes all the difference.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's love fest. Thank you for being here. Thanks for dealing with the tech and taking time out of your evening. This was like such a gift.
Of course.
To get to hang with you, but also to get to share this with everyone. I know
it's fun.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna end us on Facebook. Y'all, thank you for hanging with us. And then just a reminder from me, we have our free training next Tuesday for Transform Your Money Mindset. I say blocks because I don't love the term blocks, into gold. And we are going to tap into all of that magic next week. So be sure to sign up for that. I'll drop a link for that as well. I love you all.
It'll be good. I have the behind the scenes.
Yeah, you do.
You've the behind the scenes peek. I know it'll be good.
You've been working on the playbook for everyone. So now when you get your playbook, for those of you who signed up, Amanda is the magic who makes it look pretty, who makes it work, who gives you that beautiful editable, I can never say that word, text box. So be sure to sign up, because this one in particular, I think the playbook is extra like useful long after the workshop. So sign up for that. We'll make sure we get that into your inbox. I love you all, and I will see you next week. And I now have to figure out, how do I end on stop live stream? Bye, y'all.